This is our course Social Linguistics, where we continue lecture number 13 of this course, which is the lecture the last one before one. In this lecture we have to continue our the chapter that we have started in the previous lecture, which is chapter number 10, where we talk about the linguistic definition of standard English and the linguistic variation and the two types of standard English, which are logic and correctness. Then we move to standard English and education, where we talk about standard English in the school and standard English in the social and social quality. Chapter 12 is attitude to language. In this chapter we talk about the evidence, where we consider attitudes to whole languages and attitudes to varieties of a language and attitudes toward words and interaction. So we start with the linguistic definition of standard English, and we have in the previous lectures we have agreed that it is difficult to give an exact definition of standard English, and the reason behind this is that language varies in use. People use language differently. There is no exact usage of language by two persons, because we are humans. We do not use language exactly the same, and that's why we find it very difficult to give a precise definition of standard English. Let's have an example. People use different styles of spoken language. Again, this shows us how various the ways that people express themselves in using language, and this depends on the situation they find themselves in. If you are in a school, you talk differently. If you are at home, you will use a different way of speaking. So this is what we mean by the variation in the use of language. So for example, where you are you at home, or are you in the office, are you at the park? So depending on the place you are in, your language will vary. If you are in the office, it is expected to talk with your colleague in a almost formal language. If you are at home, your language will be informal, talking to your kids, talking to your wife or little brother. And again, if you are outside in the park, your language does not have to be formal. So you are changing from one variety to another. That's why giving an exact definition of standard English cannot be that easy. So depending on the place you are in, your language might vary. So again, whom you are talking to? Are you talking to your boss in terms of status? If the person you are talking to is higher in social status than you are, it is expected that you are using a formal variety of language, especially if you are talking to your manager, to your boss. In terms of age, again, if the person you are talking to is very old, or a person who is in his 60s or 70s and you are in your 20s, it is expected to speak in a way that shows that this person is not your friend. You are not the same age. He has a certain qualities, a certain position or a certain job that makes you use the language that suits the situation. Similarly, in terms of intimacy, if you are talking to your close friend, the one that you always spend time with, so it is expected that the language that you use is of a different variety. What you are talking about, what is the topic of the talk, what is the topic of your speech? Are you talking about economy? Are you talking about everyday news? Are you talking about people in the street? Are you talking about a football match that you have seen yesterday? So depending on the topic that you talk about, your variety of language is different. The second point is the linguistic definition of standard English, and we need to study linguistic variation, where the style of language you use depends on the formality of the context and the amount of planning that is involved. So 2 points need to be understood in this section. which is formality, and the amount of planning. Let's have an example. Our language varies on the following situation. A casual conversation between you and a close friend is an informal event. You do not have to say Mr. and please, because you are a close friend. You always meet and you are socially intimate. You know him for a long time. He's a very close friend to you. So the language that you use is not a formal language. It is, on the contrary, is an informal language. On the other hand, if you are giving a lecture, if you are a teacher, you want to give a lesson or you give a lecture to your student, or you want to deliver a speech to a group of people, you are going to plan what you say, and you are also going to plan the way that you are going to say your lecture or your lesson or your speech. So depending on the person you are talking to, and depending on the amount of planning that you do before you deliver a speech or you give a lecture. Logic and correctness are two main characteristics of standard English, but those claims were made for standard English. Number one, standard English is correct in terms of grammar, and standard English is logical. So if you say standard English is correct, this claim indicates that non-standard English, any other variety of English that's not standard, is incorrect. So if standard English is the correct variety, this means that any other variety other than standard English is incorrect. The second claim is that standard English is logical or systematic or rule governed. It is ruled. It is governed by rules. This claim again will indicate that non-standard varieties are not systematic and they are not governed by rules. So there are some people who disagree, who argue against these two claims. What are the claims? That standard English is correct and that standard English is logical. Let's have an example why they think or why they disagree with these two claims. Let's have the example of verb to be. Verb to be, in its distinction between singular and plural, could be considered quite illogical. How? In terms of singular pronouns, we say I was, but in terms of plural pronouns, we say we were. So was, were. So there is nothing the same. The verb changes. So again, this is not systematic. This is not rule governed. That's why the author of this book considered this to be illogical. But if you have the singular pronoun you also say you were. But in the case of a plural pronoun you say you were as well. So this is also not acceptable. This is illogical in terms of the claims that were made for standard English. The other example that the book gives is that there is no distinction in standard English between the form of verb to be with singular you were and singular and plural you were, because if you have one person, you can say to him you were, for example, my friend. And if you have several people, you can also address them by using the same pronoun and the same verb. You say you were, referring to a group of people. This shows that there is no correspondence between singular and plural pronouns in English. So this shows that standard English is not really correct, that standard English is not really logical. That's why some linguists argue against those two claims. Standard English in the school where we study standard English and education, the main point is that why do we concentrate on studying standard English but not non-standard English, but not black English? When we study standard English, the language of education, the language of books, the language of the governmental institution. So the motivation, the purpose, the aim behind making children speak standard English in school is explicitly given as the need to communicate effectively. So this is the main reason behind concentrating on standard English rather than non-standard English, which is to communicate effectively, the need to communicate effectively. And this was very much clear in 1995, where the British government has set up what's called Better English Campaign. And in this campaign, the purpose or the aim of this campaign was to improve standards of spoken English around the country, because the government noticed that people start to deviate from standard English. The government launched a Better English campaign, and the purpose of this campaign is to improve the standards of spoken English around the country. Standard English and social equality. We have 4 points to discuss under this heading. Number 1, there can be a relation between speaking and non-standard variety and social equality. So the way that you talk can determine your social position. The variety of English that you took can also determine the social class that you came from. This will show that there is a close relation between speaking, between the way we speak, between the way we use language, whether it is a standard variety or non-standard variety, and the social equality. Number 2, we have an example from John Ray, who links standard English to economic survival and success. So we have 2 points: standard English and economic survival. Standard English making you succeed. Standard English give you a better economic survival of life. In other words, nothing more effectively condemns an individual to his class or ethnic ghetto than an inability to communicate clearly and logically in English. According to Don Ray, is that using standard English can be your way to economic success, can be your way to economic survival. And he thinks if you cannot communicate clearly in standard English, this will be of a very great influence, of a very negative influence on your financial or economic success. Number 3, African American Vernacular English, which is a type of English, but it is not standard English. It is a language in which you usually find grammatical structures that are not acceptable in standard English, and we abbreviate this variety as AAVE, which refers to African American Vernacular English. This variety of English is seen as substandard. It is of a low standard, it is not of a high standard, and the obligation is firmly placed on its speakers to change. To change to what? To change to the standard language. Number 4, speakers of a non-standard variety like African American Vernacular English may suffer discrimination at the hands of teachers and employers. So in the United States, for example, if you want to apply for a job and they find that the language that you use is not a standard English, and that, for example, you are using the AAVE, which is the African American Vernacular English, they might reject your application, they might discriminate you, and they prefer others who speak standard English, and they can recognize your social status by the language or the variety of language that you use. So speakers of non-standard English, specifically African American English, are usually treated in a discrimination way, and they suffer in fact from discrimination at the hand of teachers and employers. Number 5, standard English is therefore seen as the appropriate dialect in the job market. So if anybody is looking for a job, he is supposed and he is expected to use standard English rather than non-standard English, rather than African American English. For example, in the United Kingdom, we have a saying by Mr. Gillian Shepherd, who suggests that those who have not mastered our marvelous language, which is English, should not expect to be able to get a job. So he has linked being able to speak standard English to your opportunity of getting a job. In other words, if you do not speak standard English, you are not going to get a job. So if you do not master the language of the country you are in, you are not going to get a job opportunity. Number 6, there is a clear obligation on the non-standard speakers to change if they wish to keep their rights as citizens to take up employment. So there is an obligation on those people who speaks non-standard English, particularly African American English, so they push him to change from the African American English to the standard English. Otherwise, they are threatened to lose their jobs, they are threatened to lose their rights as citizens. So there is an obligation, there is a force of making those people change from a non-standard variety to a standard variety under the threat of losing their job, under the threat of losing their civil rights. Standard English and standards. What does that mean? There is a close relation between the language we speak and our social standards. Sometimes, let's first read this quotation by Norman Tebbit in 1985, who points out that if you allow standards to slip to the stage where good English is no better than bad English, where people turn up filthy at school, all these things tend to cause people to have no standards at all. And once you lose a standard, then there is no imperative to stay out of a crime. So this author or this writer thinks that using standard English would reflect the personality of the speaker. If a person uses a standard English, this means he has standards, this means he keeps to the standards, this means that he's a man of principle. And if the other way happened, if somebody uses bad English, if somebody uses African vernacular English or filthy English, filthy language, it is clear that this person reflects his personality, this person has no standards, this person can do anything, including crimes. And that's why he says there is no imperative to stay out of a crime, because you are staying out of the standards, and the standard could be standard of English as well. Another example from John Ray in 1982, who points out to the same point. He says, attention to the rules of a grammar and care in the choice of words encourages punctuality or punctuousness in other matters, in such matters as honesty, responsibility, property, gratitude, apology, and so on. So this author again says, if somebody is using standard English, this also tells us something about his personality, that he is a man of standard, and he's an honest man, he's a responsible man, he's a man who can acknowledge gratitude, and he can apologize, he's a respectable person, he's a civilized person. So the more standard your variety is, the better person or the better character you have. We move to chapter 11, where we talk about attitudes to language. Of course, this is the final chapter in our course, and next lecture will be the last lecture. People assign various attributes, various characteristics, various adjectives to language forms. They may feel that a language or variety of a language is elegant. So these are the terms that we describe languages. Language can be elegant, language can be expressive, again language can be vulgar, and language can be guttural and musical as well. Excuse me, or that one language form is more polite or more aesthetically pleasing or displeasing than another one. So those are the terms, or those are the attributes that we can use to describe languages. We move to the point where we discuss evidence toward the attitudes to language, where we can find evidence of positive and negative attitudes towards a wide range of linguistic issues, particularly language. We are going to consider first attitudes to whole languages, where somebody is giving an attitude about Arabic, an attitude about English. So he is considering, or he is giving a judgment or an attitude in relation to the language itself. For example, in Britain, although many languages are in daily use, only English has official recognition. So this is one attitude toward a whole language, which is English. If you go to the United Kingdom, you will find tens of languages. People from different countries come and live in that country, and they use their own language, but only English is recognized by the government. Only English is the language that is officially acknowledged. So this shows us one attitude toward language where the government acknowledge only English as an official language. Number two, for the English, especially multilingualism is viewed with suspicion and as a threat to the national unity. So in the United Kingdom, for example, or in any other country where two languages are spoken, where, for example, in the any Arabic country we find people who are using a language other than Arabic, we start thinking negatively about those people. We try to suspect that those people are spies, and we have to think about them as a threat to the national unity of the country. So when I say bilingualism or multilingualism means speaking more than one language. Bilingualism, speaking two languages. So if there is a language other than Arabic or other than English, depending on the country you are in, this language is looked at in a suspicious way. We suspect that the speakers of this language are spies. They threat the national unity of the country. Number three, in a speech to a meeting at the Conservative Party conference in October 1997, a prominent conservative called for national unity, saying, "Now notice how a conservative member would think of national unity." He said, "We need common values. We need a common culture and a single language." So he claims that single language is a way of getting national unity. He does not want multi-languages. He does not want any other language rather than his own language, or the English language. So they think of the national unity, they think of using one language or single language as a way of maintaining social or national unity. Attitudes to whole language. We are still in this section. Attitudes toward English in the United States have an association with national unity. The promotion of English both in Britain and in the United States leads to the marginalization of other languages which exist there. Again, so the promotion of English, if you are promoting English, we are in the United Kingdom, and we support English. We support the governmental institution language, the language that is supported by the government. Now, when we support one language, what happens to the other varieties of English? What happens to the other languages, to the Arabic, to the student who came from other countries and they use Spanish, they use Portuguese, they use Arabic, for example? So what happened to those languages? They become marginalized. They do not take care of them. So only English is supported. This again shows us an attitude toward a whole language, which is English, supporting one language and neglecting others, neglecting any language that is not English. So promotion of English will marginalize the other languages that exist in the same country. Number 5, minority languages and their speakers may be seen as divisive, even dangerous, and a threat to political, social, economy, and stability. So again, we explained this point before, that if you are a minority group, suppose you are speaking Italian and you are living in an Arabic country, the people of that country will look at your language as a threat to the stability of the country, as a threat to the social stability of the country, as a threat to the political issues of the country, because any language other than the main language, other than the native language, other than the official language will be looked at in a threatening way, in a suspicious way. We move to attitudes toward varieties of a language. We consider attitudes toward varieties of the same language. Example, we have Fassold, who describe how the French is spoken in Europe is seen to be more prestigious than that spoken in Canada, even by native Canadian French speakers. Another example is that people, usually high-class people, show negative attitude toward non-standard variety of English, especially in Britain, or toward American varieties such as African American Vernacular English in the United States. Number 3 is the creation of verbs from nouns found more in American English than in varieties of British English is popularly criticized, as in the letter to the Time. So we have this letter which appeared in the Times newspaper, where the speaker or the writer says, "Could we stop assuming that any noun can automatically be turned into a verb?" This is a criticism toward a language again. So all those are showing us how people are looking at languages, what are the attitudes toward a specific language. We move to attitudes toward words and interaction. In 1997, the British Psychological Society prohibited the use of the word subjects in its publication to refer to those taking part in psychological experiment. So according to this society, they say we need to stop using the word subject. And the word subject in this sense means people who participate in an experiment. Such participants were to be referred to instead as individuals or people or students. So instead of say I am using Mr. Ahmed, Mr. Khalid as subjects in my experiment, you need to say I'm using this individual, I'm using those two people, I'm using those students, instead of using the word subject, and so on and so forth. So the letters to October 1997 edition of the Psychologist describe this decision as tosh or trivial. So they did not really take care of it, and one which leaves the eminent writers of these letters baffled. So this again shows us how people have certain or specific attitude toward specific words. Another example is attitude towards may be so negative that the words may be considered not suitable for use at all. For example, we often invent euphemism to cover such words. For example, instead of saying death or dying, we might say pass away. So the use of euphemism is again another attitude toward specific words, that you do not want to shock the hearer. You do not use a word like death. You do not say somebody was dead. Instead you say somebody passed away, or somebody his number was up. So instead of saying those terms, you use euphemism. You try to cover those terms by using less shocking words, or words which looks inabusive or less shocking. For example, some words are considered so unsuitable that they become totally taboo. So words which are not acceptable in the social in a specific social community are considered taboo, so that people would not use them. So again, this is another example of how people would think of specific words, that this word is a taboo, try not to use it. This word need to be covered, you use euphemism. This word need to be changed. So these are different attitudes toward different words, showing how people have different attitude toward the use of vocabulary. Number D, expressions such as right, like, you know, see you later are negatively treated. So we have attitudes toward languages, we have attitudes toward specific words, and we have attitudes toward phrases or little sentences, or say chunks of speech. So expressions such as right, some people, once you start talking to them, they say yes, right, yes, I know. So these terms or those words or those utterances are negatively treated. Some of these expressions may be associated with certain group of people and may function as identity markers. That if, for example, Hani came, oh, this is the person who usually says right, this is the person who always say yes, you know. So those expressions have become identity markers. We mark a person by the type of utterance that he uses. The expression you know is very common. You know is considered to be a marker of imprecise, that people who use this utterance are imprecise. They are not certain, they are not sure of what they are saying. Yes, you know, yes, you know, yes. So they always use this term. When women speak, attitudes toward their talk are often negative. We look negatively at the way women talk, that they are chatterboxes, that they gossip a lot, that what they say is unimportant because they spend a long time chatting and making longer conversation compared with men. So this again takes us to the end of this lecture. We still have only one lecture, which is lecture number 14, where we talk about the exam. Thank you very much for this lecture. Thank you.